Welcome back to the channel, everybody. How you doing? I just want to say I appreciate you guys being here. Today we are reviewing A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Let's get into the synopsis first before we really dive into this book. When 19-year-old huntress Feyre kills a wolf in the woods, a terrifying creature arrives to demand retribution. Dragged to a treacherous, magical land she knows about only from legends, Feyre discovers that her captor is not truly a beast, but one of the lethal, immortal fairies who once ruled her world. At least, he's not a beast all the time. As she adapts to her new home, her feelings for the fairy, Tamlin, transform from icy hostility into a fiery passion that burns through every lie she's been told about that beautiful, dangerous world of the Fae. But something is not right in the fairy lands. An ancient, wicked shadow is growing, and Feyre must find a way to stop it, or doom Tamlin and his world forever. So I finally read ACOTAR. I read the first book. Trying to figure out this title was more difficult than I thought, for one, because I didn't realize the series just is called ACOTAR, and so is the first book. So I was like, oh, it's kind of like the Game of Thrones thing. Granted, I know it's like a Song of Fire and Ice, but everyone just calls it a Game of Thrones. So I read ACOTAR. And going into it, I actually didn't have high expectations at all. I went with a clear, open mind, because my first experience of reading Romantasy was Fourth Wing, and that was god-awful. So I was like, let's read the queen of Romantasy, the one who kind of made the genre what it is today. I decided, let's do it. And reading it opens up being first person. You meet Feyre, and I'm gonna say this now, I'm not the biggest fan of Feyre as a main character. I'm not really a big fan of her. There's just something with her I just don't really like. She's kind of dumb in a lot of elements. I also like it because it's like, it shows that she is a character, which is cool. I mean, there's elements of it where I liked Feyre, but then there's other times where I'm like, oh, I don't like Feyre that much. I did notice, I was telling my girlfriend, I was reading this book on my way to my family's house for Christmas, and I told my girl, I was like, this is like Beauty and the Beast, and she's like, yeah, it's inspired from Beauty and the Beast. I was like, oh. Reading this book, I was about to the 300 mark, so there's a part where Tamlin tells Feyre about the blight, that it's stripping away their magic, because he couldn't tell her the truth because he's like cursed, and she does like a giant info dump about that. That's like one of my biggest pet peeves is towards the end of this book. I think Sarah J. Maas just wrote a lot of info dump in this book that, to me, it really took me out as like the reader, because there was times where she would info dump early on, but it was pretty short. And that's the way I like info dumping. When I'm reading a book, I feel like info dumping is fine if it's like 2 paragraphs, or when both characters are like talking about the info dump and it feels organic. But there was a part towards the end where the info dump was just so much that I was just like, come on, like hurry it up. Especially because there was a part where Feyre has to go back home after, like, because Tamlin told her that she's in danger, so she went back home. I felt like that was interesting, I guess. It wasn't the way I expected the book to go, but she went back home, and like her sister Nesta and Elena were there, and her father was there. And Nesta is kind of like a biatch in this. The way that Sarah wrote these characters, I think she writes them really well. Like, it doesn't feel like any of these characters are the same. They all have personality, especially Nesta and Feyre, how they get along. Nesta's a very believable character, and so is Feyre. I like the way that she wrote these characters, but there was parts of this book that I didn't feel like, wow. Once Tamlin, because basically for the first 300 pages, I would say Feyre is hang out with Tamlin. After she kills a fairy, Tamlin captures her. The rest of those pages is just her, and you're learning about the world that she's in, and you're learning more about with her and Tamlin. Their relationship is slowly growing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I was kind of enjoying it, but it felt like it was very slow. There was some moments that she was like making it feel like, oh yeah, this was really good. And I could tell that she was fleshing out to make the romance feel believable. And I actually really appreciated that. I just felt like there was a lot of times when I'm reading just books in general that the romance is very quick and there's nothing there. So I will say with ACOTAR, she did like a I think it's called slow burn romance, but she kind of does slow burn with Tamlin and Feyre. Like, you guys already know, like, they're gonna hook up, but she let you like breathe into the world and really could feel them connecting. But there's just a lot of things where Feyre is just doing things that was just like, why are we doing this? She's very headstrong with things. I usually don't mind characters that are headstrong because they do a lot of stupid things and it moves the plot, so I'm not gonna hate on her for that. But it's like, every time I read the book and the characters are headstrong, I just roll my eyes, and I do it almost every single time. But then I'm like, you know, it moves the plot, so I'm not going to complain. It's one of those things for me. But with this book though, once Tamlin sends Feyre back home, and Feyre like goes back because she's like, I have to be with him, and she made up a name, and then that family got killed, but she went back. And after she went back, maybe it was just me, wow, the pacing of the book just dropped right off. I thought we were like to the climax, but we also had another 100 and some odd pages left after she went back, and she kind of has to like go save Tamlin from like this evil witch named Amarath. When she goes to save him, at first I was like, oh, okay, so she's gonna go save him, and then they're gonna have like a team up moment and go kill this dark witch Amarath. No, she gets captured immediately, and then instead of Amarath doing anything, she just says, you have 3 months, you have 3 trials, and if you can't succeed in them all, you die. But hey, if you pass them, Tamlin's yours, and so is all your homies. Even though Freya was told not to make any deals with fairies, she makes 2 deals with fairies. One was Rydstand, I think his name is, and then Amarath. And I'm like, you were just told this. And yes, she said, oh, I would die if with Amarath, but I'm like, you did not have a plan. You just went in there and then you died. I mean, you just got captured. Like, it was just, I didn't like that progression after. I didn't like the trial thing. I just felt like it was just a lot of fluff. And of course, there was more info dumping, and I was like, oh my gosh. I don't know, it just felt like a lot. Like, clearly, she set up things for a second book with Rysand, because Rysand, like, heals her arm, but she, like, made a deal with him, and she would spend 1 week with him every month for the rest of her life, and it's like, oh, it's kind of creepy. But, so that's going on in this book. And clearly it's getting sprinkled in for the second book, because I'm assuming the second book is gonna be about that, because her and Tamlin have to like face that to beat that. And I'm like, pretty sure you can just kill this dude. Who knows? I mean, it sounds like I'm complaining a lot, but I did enjoy this book to an extreme, to like a limit. There's just things I was like noticing. I'm like, yeah, well, the first half of it I was kind of cool with. I didn't really mind. I'm like, this is just a typical romance thing, just set in a fantasy world, which is predominantly romantasy, which is fine. But then the second part, once she came back, it just dropped right off. The pacing was just really bad. I just didn't like it. And I kind of wish this was the ending of the book was maybe more of the book, you know? Like maybe that's how the book starts off with. I don't know. I'm not going to try and change it because this woman made millions of dollars from this series. But to me, I just didn't like how the trials were. I felt like it was just thrown in there. And like I said, I think it was just a setup for the second book, which I told my girlfriend I'm not a big fan of it. But it sounds like a lot of people don't like the first book to ACOTAR that much. And they all say a lot of the same reasoning. So I'm glad I'm not on a ship alone. My girlfriend told me that the second book is where it picks up. So I'll be reading that in February, so that'll be exciting to see what happens. Right now, I think the first book of ACOTAR is a 3 out of 5 for me. Doesn't mean it's awful, doesn't mean it's great, it's just right in the middle, which is perfectly fine. If you guys made it to the end of the video, I do appreciate it. What did you guys think about ACOTAR? Did you guys like the first book or did you not like it? I would like to know if what I thought about the book is something a lot of people noticed, or maybe you just think I'm delusional and you liked the little gladiator trial thing. Also, is the second book better? What is your favorite book in this series? I'd like to know down below. And of course, make sure you guys stay safe, stay humble, and tell someone you love them. I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay weird.